For years, the world has known Katt Williams as the unpredictable, fiery comedian who always seemed to attract controversy. His name consistently made headlines for all the wrong reasons: public meltdowns, bizarre interviews, explosive rants, and unpredictable altercations. The media painted him as Hollywood's clown, a troubled genius whose chaos was both his downfall and his brand. But behind the wild behavior and eccentric personality was a truth far darker than anyone could have imagined. That truth finally spilled out in a courtroom, where Katt Williams, no longer able to hold back, revealed a confession that could tear down the very foundations of Hollywood. This wasn't another publicity stunt, nor was it a comedy routine taken too far. What he admitted in court shook not only his fans but also the entertainment industry, exposing secrets so powerful that they could dismantle the empire of glamour, wealth, and power that Hollywood had carefully built over decades. The world first learned that something serious was coming when Katt hinted that he was ready to tell the truth. For years, his chaotic outbursts had been dismissed as the antics of a man spiraling out of control. But this time was different. There were no cryptic Twitter posts, no strange interviews, and no late-night rants. Instead, Katt found himself in front of a judge under oath and ready to unburden himself of the dark secrets he had carried for far too long. The confession was more than just a personal breakdown. It was the unveiling of a sinister web of corruption, conspiracy, and manipulation that stretched far beyond Katt Williams himself. At the center of it all was the tragic story of his friend, Reggie Carol, whose mysterious death had long raised questions. Many dismissed Reggie's passing as an unfortunate accident or a simple case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But according to Katt's confession, it was anything but random. Reggie Carol, once a rising figure in the comedy scene and a close associate of Katt's, had started to dig into financial matters that were never meant to see the light of day. He wasn't just poking around at minor bookkeeping errors or personal spending habits. Reggie had stumbled upon something monumental: evidence of financial corruption, tied not only to Katt Williams, but to some of the most powerful names in Hollywood. Shell companies, offshore accounts, and laundering schemes formed the backbone of what Reggie discovered. It was a system designed to funnel money discreetly, a machine fueled by lies, secrecy, and manipulation. The deeper Reggie dug, the more dangerous it became. According to Katt's court testimony, Reggie had uncovered enough evidence to expose an entire network of corruption that reached into Hollywood's highest ranks. It wasn't just about one comedian's shady financial dealings. It was about producers, executives, and A-list stars who had been participating in a decades-long cover-up to protect their wealth and power. Reggie, knowingly or not, had stumbled into a game where truth was deadly, and that's when things took a dark turn. Katt revealed in court that Reggie's death was not the accident the public was led to believe. It was deliberate. Reggie had been silenced before he could bring the truth to light. He had started asking questions no one wanted answered, and in Hollywood, that kind of curiosity can cost you your life. Katt admitted that he was not just a bystander in this tragedy, but a participant. Whether as a pawn manipulated by others or as someone complicit in protecting the system. Hollywood, according to Katt, had long thrived on chaos. As long as the public focused on his meltdowns, his violent outbursts, or his bizarre interviews, no one was paying attention to what was happening behind the curtain. He became the perfect distraction. Every headline about his craziness kept the spotlight away from the real corruption bubbling beneath the surface, but the courtroom confession shattered that illusion. Katt spoke of a financial empire tied to shell corporations like Onyx Owl LLC, a business that had been presented as nothing more than a clothing brand. In reality, it was allegedly a front for laundering money, covering tracks, and moving funds between shadowy entities. Offshore accounts, unexplained transfers, and powerful backers all tied into the picture Katt painted. And the scariest part, he wasn't alone. He was only one piece in a massive puzzle orchestrated by individuals far more powerful than himself. The confession also placed Reggie Carol at the center of this story, not as a background character, but as the man who had unknowingly threatened to bring the entire machine crashing down. Reggie's curiosity, his refusal to ignore the inconsistencies he saw, made him a target. According to Katt, the system decided that Reggie had to be eliminated before his discoveries could be made public. What Katt revealed was not just shocking, it was explosive. It connected Hollywood's scandals to an underworld of financial crimes, corruption, and murder. And for the first time, someone from within was willing to say it out loud. The aftermath of the confession has left the industry shaken. If what Katt admitted is true, it means Hollywood's golden image is nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion. Beneath the glamour lies a corrupt empire willing to destroy anyone who threatens to expose its secrets. The real question now is this: why did Katt finally speak out? Was it guilt that drove him to confess? Fear that the system was closing in on him? Or was it his final attempt to redeem himself by pulling back the curtain on the corruption he had been forced to live with for so long? Whatever his reasons, one thing is clear: his testimony was not just about his personal downfall. It was a declaration of war against the Hollywood elite. The courtroom walls may have contained his words, but the ripple effect is already spreading far and wide. Katt Williams's confession is more than a headline. It's the spark that could ignite a reckoning unlike anything the entertainment world has seen before. And this is just the beginning. When Katt Williams confessed in court, the first wave of shock came from his admission of involvement in the death of his close associate, Reggie Carol. For years, Reggie's passing was treated as a tragedy, but never as something sinister. His name faded into the background, overshadowed by Hollywood's relentless gossip cycle. But in reality, Reggie was much more than a side character in Katt's chaotic story. He was the spark that set off the firestorm threatening to engulf Hollywood. Reggie Carol wasn't simply a fellow comedian or a friend tagging along for the ride. According to Katt's testimony, Reggie had begun pulling at the loose threads of a carefully woven tapestry of lies. His curiosity led him into dangerous territory, the financial world behind the entertainment industry. Reggie had started asking questions about unexplained payments, inconsistencies in Katt's finances, and strange business entities like Onyx Owl LLC. To the outside world, it was just a clothing brand. But as Reggie dug deeper, it became clear that it was something much more sinister. A front for money laundering and illegal financial schemes that extended far beyond Katt Williams himself. At first, it might have seemed like harmless snooping, a friend trying to understand what was really going on. But Reggie had unknowingly stepped into the path of something massive, a machine fueled by corruption, greed, and power. And in Hollywood, people who get too close to the truth often don't live long enough to tell it. Katt revealed that Reggie's death wasn't random at all. It was calculated. The moment Reggie uncovered evidence of offshore accounts and hidden transactions, he became a liability. The system that thrived in secrecy couldn't risk being exposed by a single man, no matter how small his influence seemed. That's when, according to Katt, powerful figures stepped in to silence him permanently. The revelation stunned the courtroom and, later, the public. To hear Katt Williams admit not only that his friend had been murdered, but also that he himself was entangled in the web of corruption, was more than anyone expected. It was no longer about a troubled comedian's antics. It was about a criminal conspiracy that stretched into the highest levels of Hollywood. But Katt didn't stop there. He described in detail how Hollywood used him as a distraction. Every time he lashed out in an interview or made headlines for erratic behavior, it wasn't just a personal meltdown. It was part of a larger system. The chaos surrounding him served a purpose: to divert attention from the corruption that people like Reggie Carol were beginning to expose. Katt became the perfect scapegoat, the clown whose antics blinded the public to the darkness lurking beneath the glamour. Then came the most explosive part of his confession: the names. Katt admitted that Onyx LLC was not his brainchild alone. It was supported, financed, and protected by some of the most influential figures in the entertainment world. Producers, executives, and even A-list celebrities had their fingerprints on the schemes. These weren't faceless criminals operating in the shadows. They were the very people celebrated at award shows, praised for their creativity, and admired by millions. Behind the scenes, however, they were allegedly funneling money, covering their tracks, and ensuring anyone who got too close, like Reggie, would be silenced. As shocking as it was, this revelation began to make sense of Katt's turbulent public life. His breakdowns weren't random. They were symptoms of living under the weight of secrets too heavy to carry. They were eruptions of guilt, frustration, and fear. For years, he had played the part of the Hollywood wild card while privately navigating a dangerous underworld of corruption. The confession also tied into something larger than just Katt and Reggie. According to his testimony, Hollywood was running a well-oiled machine of financial manipulation. Offshore accounts in exotic locations, shell companies with vague business purposes, and millions of dollars moved without explanation. All of it was part of a network designed to protect the powerful while exploiting everyone beneath them. Katt himself had been both a participant and a victim, caught in a system too dangerous to defy but too corrupt to ignore. Reggie Carol's investigation was a direct threat to this machine. His discovery of strange payments and unexplained financial transfers was not something Hollywood could afford to let slip into the public domain. That's why, Katt admitted, Reggie became a target. And in Hollywood, when the stakes are high enough, silencing someone becomes just another part of business. The revelation raised chilling questions. If Reggie Carol's death was orchestrated to protect Hollywood's elite, how many others had been silenced over the years? How many so-called accidents or unexplained tragedies were actually cover-ups designed to protect the empire of wealth and power? Katt's confession hinted that Reggie's case was not unique, but part of a pattern that had existed for decades. But the most terrifying part of Katt's admission was his role in it all. Was he a pawn, manipulated into keeping quiet and distracted by his own demons? Or was he an accomplice, aware of what was happening and choosing to play along until the guilt became unbearable? Katt didn't provide all the answers, but his willingness to confess suggested a man finally pushed to his breaking point. The fallout was immediate. As soon as word spread, Hollywood went into damage control. Publicists, executives, and celebrities began distancing themselves from Katt, acting as though his words were nothing more than the ravings of a troubled man. But behind the scenes, panic set in. If Katt had exposed Onyx LLC and its financial schemes, who would be the next to talk? How many others knew about the system and had been forced to stay quiet? The FBI, according to reports, took notice of Katt's testimony. What started as a personal scandal quickly escalated into a federal investigation. Agents began digging into financial records, questioning associates, and following the money trail that Reggie had first uncovered. It wasn't just Katt Williams under scrutiny anymore, it was Hollywood itself. And this was only the beginning. Katt Williams's courtroom confession wasn't just about Reggie Carol's tragic death. It was about lifting the curtain on an entire system of corruption that had thrived in secrecy for far too long. The chaos, the meltdowns, the scandals, All of it had been smoke and mirrors, distracting the public while the real crimes happened in the shadows. Now, with Reggie's death exposed as murder and Hollywood's financial empire under investigation, the walls were beginning to close in. The industry that once seemed untouchable was suddenly vulnerable, and as the truth continued to unravel, it became clear that Katt's confession was only the tip of the iceberg. Hollywood's darkest secrets were about to come spilling out. By the time Katt Williams finished his confession in court, Hollywood was already in a state of panic. The story wasn't just about one comedian's mistakes anymore, it had escalated into a full-blown scandal implicating some of the most powerful figures in the entertainment industry. What began as whispers about financial misconduct had snowballed into allegations of murder, corruption, and a cover-up that stretched all the way to the top of Hollywood's food chain. The FBI wasted no time stepping in. Katt's testimony provided investigators with a roadmap: shell companies like Onyx Owl LLC, offshore accounts, unexplained transfers, and a suspicious paper trail that had been hidden in plain sight. Agents began combing through years of financial records, connecting the dots between Katt's empire and the bigger network that allegedly included producers, studio executives, and even some A-list actors. What they found, according to insiders, confirmed that Katt wasn't fabricating a wild conspiracy. He was exposing one. But then came the most shocking twist: the hitman's confession. For years, conspiracy theories had floated around Reggie Carol's death. Some believed it was simply bad luck, while others speculated that something more sinister had happened. Katt's courtroom revelation gave weight to the latter, but the hitman's testimony cemented it as fact. He admitted that Reggie hadn't died by accident. He had been targeted, and the orders didn't come from some anonymous figure in the shadows. According to the hitman, Katt Williams was present when the decision was made. That revelation shattered any illusion of Katt being merely a pawn. Instead, it painted a darker picture. He wasn't just caught in Hollywood's web of corruption. He was actively participating in it. The man who had long been seen as the victim of his own chaos was suddenly revealed as complicit in orchestrating one of Hollywood's darkest cover-ups. The hitman's testimony also expanded the scope of the investigation. He didn't just point to Katt Williams, he hinted at a larger group of individuals who had ordered Reggie's silencing. These weren't nameless criminals. They were insiders with deep pockets and powerful connections, people who had everything to lose if Reggie's discoveries came to light. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Hollywood, once an untouchable empire built on glitz and glamour, suddenly looked fragile. Major studios began distancing themselves from Katt, pulling projects, and scrubbing his name from promotional material. Celebrities who once called him a friend avoided any public association, but the real fear wasn't about Katt's career, it was about what his confession might trigger, because once one person talks, others often follow. Anonymous sources began reaching out to investigators, confirming details of secret meetings, suspicious payments, and cover-ups that had been hidden for years. Executives and actors who once felt untouchable now faced the possibility of being dragged into the scandal. The FBI, armed with Katt's confession and the hitman's testimony, intensified their probe. Subpoenas were issued, documents were seized, and names that once represented Hollywood royalty were suddenly whispered with fear. Meanwhile, the public reaction was explosive. Social media lit up with hashtags like #KattWilliamsExposed and #HollywoodConspiracy, with fans and critics alike demanding answers. For years, people had joked about Hollywood being shady, but now they were confronted with evidence that the corruption ran deeper than anyone had dared to imagine. The once unshakable trust in the industry began to crumble. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this saga was what it suggested about the larger system. If Reggie Carol could be silenced so easily, How many others had been victims of the same machinery? How many careers were destroyed, lives ended, and truths buried to protect Hollywood's elite? Katt's confession hinted that Reggie's murder wasn't an isolated event, but part of a pattern that had existed for decades. The scandal also raised uncomfortable questions about complicity. Was Katt Williams confessing out of genuine remorse? Or was he trying to save himself from a system that was closing in? His decision to expose Hollywood's secrets might have been framed as a brave act, but the hitman's testimony suggested he wasn't just a whistleblower, he was also guilty. That duality made him both the villain and the hero of the story, a man simultaneously destroying Hollywood's illusions while being consumed by his own sins. As the investigation deepened, more names began to surface. According to leaks from inside the FBI, the conspiracy involved far more people than initially suspected. Studio executives, big-budget producers, and well-known actors were all implicated in the financial schemes tied to Onyx Owl LLC. The network was vast, and the deeper agents dug, the clearer it became that Katt's confession had opened Pandora's box, and Hollywood was terrified. Behind closed doors, damage control meetings were held. Lawyers worked around the clock, trying to contain the fallout. Some celebrities deleted old posts connecting them to Katt, while others issued vague statements about trusting the process. But the cracks were already showing. The empire of lies that Hollywood had built was beginning to collapse under the weight of the truth. The question now wasn't whether Hollywood was corrupt. It was how deep the corruption went, and how many people would go down with it. Katt's confession had triggered an industry-wide reckoning. It wasn't just about him anymore. The scandal had become a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of an industry that thrived on illusion. And as the truth came out, the public's perception of Hollywood shifted permanently. No longer was it just the land of dreams and stardom. It was a machine fueled by secrecy, exploitation, and control. The FBI investigation is still ongoing, but the writing is on the wall. The days of Hollywood sweeping scandals under the rug are over. Katt Williams' courtroom breakdown has set off a chain reaction that cannot be stopped. Reggie Carol's death, once dismissed as a tragedy, has now become the catalyst for exposing an empire of lies. And the biggest question remains, who else will be exposed? Because if there's one thing Katt's confession made clear, it's that he wasn't acting alone. The same people who orchestrated Reggie's silencing, who used Onyx Owl LLC as a financial front, who thrived in secrecy while presenting themselves as icons of creativity and success, they are still out there. And with the FBI breathing down their necks, their time is running out. Hollywood, once a symbol of glamour and success, is now facing its greatest crisis. Careers will be destroyed, reputations will crumble, and the truth, once buried beneath layers of chaos and illusion, is finally clawing its way to the surface. The reckoning has begun.